Hey, this is Adam Torres, and I'm here to tell you that it has never been easier to start your very own podcast. At Mission Matters, our goal is to amplify stories that matter. That means we want to help you start your podcast because your story matters. We can do this in 3 different ways. 1, join our podcast school and take a free or paid course. 2, visit our resources page where we've already figured out what you need, such as where to host your podcast. Or 3, heck, we can even do everything for you through our podcast agency, including editing for cheaper than you can do in-house. Oh, and no contracts, service is month to month. Get started by heading over to missionmatters.com and click on Start a Podcast. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Christopher Marston on the line. He's founder and CEO over at Exemplar Companies. Chris, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Oh, man, so I'm excited to get into today's topic. So we're going to talk about the infinite game, creating a value economy to replace the labor economy, and love to hear your take on this and what you're doing over at Exemplar. And I've got, for the audience, I've gotten to know Chris. I was just recently on one of his shows, which we're going to talk about too. We'll bring that up today, and I definitely want you to check that out on YouTube. But before we go that route, Chris, let's just go with your background a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about how you got started in your career and in business.
Sure. Well, my entree into business was in the finance industry in the 90s in the tech boom. I worked in corporate finance, and I worked in market finance as a hedge fund for a bit, and then at a bond trading desk, and then got into a CFO position in a startup company in the tech boom. So my job was to budget for stuff and plan, and that was at that time it was fashionable to hire big firms. We'll talk about that later, but it is no longer fashionable, newsflash. So realized that you really couldn't budget for professional services. That's crazy. And then, we had a successful stint there. The company's still around, very successful. It's a tech company in fintech, the payments industry. Went to law and business school and came out and realized that I needed to solve the problem that we had in the industry, which is really a crisis in the professions of miserable professionals and clients dealing with billable hours and the like.
And I think that's a great transition. So let's just dive right into Exemplar Companies. So tell us a little bit more about your company and what makes it unique.
Sure. Exemplar Companies, we're a holistically integrated knowledge firm that combines the first non-billable hour law firm in American history, exclusively fixed and value-based prices. We don't even have timesheets, with much the same from a tax and accounting firm standpoint, no timesheets, no billable hours, a management consulting firm, and a FINRA member broker-dealer investment bank. So essentially law, business, tax, and capital. And we focus on revolutionary game changers and impact businesses. So we're cradle to gravy, startup to middle market. And we're pretty much the holistic, knowledge firm that surrounds these businesses with the support they need. So we take the brain damage out of consuming knowledge firms because you can't budget for it and you have to find a bunch of disparate professionals to work together. It's been really an amazing journey.
Yeah, when I heard your story originally from a good buddy of mine, Dan Bienenfeld, and I've seen how your model was, and I thought of my early career in finance. I'm like, oh, this guy's like the Charles Schwab, but of like tax and law and other things, like with this non-billable hour thing. Like, so if I think about like what a Schwab did, he, when brokerage regulate in terms of how much you could charge for a trade was deregulated, what did he do? He brought the price down. Everybody else brought it up, and then he built a big company from it. And I look at what you did and how long ago you started this. So just for clear communication for the audience, I mean, we're talking about this is 16 years ago or so you started with this model, which back then was probably considered crazy, and now you're considered a pioneer. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, it was 15 years ago, and what a long journey. I mean, just navigating regulatory hurdles and combining and figuring out how to, getting the FINRA member broker-dealer up. The first 4 or 5 years was developing the business. And at that time, knowledge firms had a bunch of last names, like Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and all that stuff. It was all about ego and last name. You couldn't find a branded firm. Now it's much bigger. And back then we had a quadruple bottom line. We added the spiritual bottom line to the triple bottom line because we're in a world still today full of rich, miserable people. And the world just doesn't need more rich, miserable people. We need happy people to do well by doing good. So we thought we needed to restore the spiritual bottom line to the mix because it was conspicuously absent. So it's been a hell of a time, and we've totally, now it is of its time, and we're 50 professionals in 9 offices.
Talk a little bit more about that quadruple, because I don't want to glance over that or assume that everybody knows what it is, because it is very different. Like very, very few companies that I've come across in your space, management, consulting, tax law, investment banking. I don't know that I've come across another company just on my knowledge that has that.
Well, right. I think values are missing from the mix, and this is a bit where capitalism has gone wrong, because capitalism wasn't started without values. It was started with them, and they've been pulled out. But the triple bottom line was the social, financial, and environmental bottom line, and we added the spiritual bottom line. We became a benefit corporation. And at the beginning of the statute of Delaware, we were the first. A Patagonian exemplar cut the tape with the governor for that. And for us, that means not just tending to, or not just making a lot of money and donating 1%. The greenwashing has been around forever. We actually focus on revolutionaries, game change, and impact businesses as clients. So people that are in life sciences, disrupting in stem cells, or cancer cures, or resonance physics, biohacking, cannabis, blockchain, AI, AR, fintech, green tech, clean tech, and beyond. So we spend our life's energies advancing working with revolutionaries, pushing evolution forward.
I love it. It's awesome. I think it's different, and I think it's definitely a fresh story and a fresh take. So let's go a little bit further into this idea of creating a value economy and to replace the labor economy. Like, maybe start it off with just giving us a little bit of your thought process of how that looks.
Sure. I studied economics, so a lot of the reason we're here is the fixed price thing is not just about giving people certainty. It's actually about fixing the really irreparable damage that labor theory has done in the labor economy of the Industrial Revolution to the workforce. And so most people who didn't study economics just didn't know billing by the hour was an accident in the history of the professions worldwide. It started in the U.S. only in the late 1950s as a widespread practice, and it was like our worst export ever. Sadly, we just are repeating the mistakes of the Industrial Revolution and turning humans into drones, machines that are designed to just do everything in repetitive motion very efficiently, without thought, without heart, without care. And that has translated terribly, and in fact, ineffectively, into knowledge work, because knowledge work is about thought. It is about care. And that's not something that gets boiled into, efficiency units and fungible billing units very well, and doesn't measure well. Value economy is really about taking this model where you pay people as little as possible, as less as you can, in fact, to extract the value. And then the managers or leaders get richer and richer by having a fixed labor cost and by finding ways to create more and more value for the end consumer and leaving their people behind. And that is the source of the ever greater wealth gap we have in society. And, the first place that there's no excuse for that, I think it's everywhere. I think everywhere needs to be a value economy and a meritocracy is knowledge work, because they're smart people and they need to be incentivized to create better, different, transformative outcomes for clients. They need to have a stake in the outcome. And so it's so critical to change the model from a labor theory model, which was all based in hourly billing, to focusing in on value and merit.
Wow, and I like that you bring up that the hourly thing was an accident and one of the worst exports, because I think sometimes we forget that a lot of the things that, like, to not talk about business, let's say it could be the school system, right? That also came from Industrial Revolution and training people that they're supposed to go work in factories after, like and the bell, everything. This stuff was just made up. This isn't like fact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. The most people, when I founded the firm, I actually went to ask because it was so obvious as a finance person that billing by the hour is so massively misaligned with the client's interest. And I couldn't reconcile it. As an economics person, as just an intuitive business person, I'm like, this is dumb. It's retarded. Like, everyone I know hates it. I don't know a single person that likes it. So I had to find out why we do it. So I asked the elders, AKA old white guys, because that was all that we had back
The
then,
elders.
right?
I like that, the elders.
The old white guys pat me on the head and said, yeah, that's cute, Sonny, but this is the way it's always been done. And you know what? That probably would have been an okay answer before we had Google.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was still so dumb, I had to go Google it. I realized that even they didn't know where the hell we've come from. And you know how dangerous it is when we forget where we've come from. So,
oh, man.
Anyways, I was like, okay, somebody's really got to save the profession now because we're screwed if this is our future.
So talk about how the consumer side benefits from, because I know from the it should be pretty straightforward from the person that's working and doing the work that they get to put their heart, their effort into it in the way that they're being paid. But talk about how the consumer potentially benefits from this side.
Oh, totally. But there's a lot of ways. I mean, it's enormous. But the two biggest ways are this: giving a damn changes the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
If you care, it changes the outcome. That's it. And part of that gets back to having the economic power to care. So this is the most important part, the economic power to care. Because there are people who bill by the hour who are stuck in the system because they didn't invent hourly billing. They're just stuck in an hourly system that want to care, but they have a 2,000 hour a year quota. They don't spend enough time with their family and kids. They're about to get divorced, for God's sakes. They don't have time to give a shit, but they want to. Because if they care, well, then they have to spend more time cultivating relationship with their client that their client doesn't want to pay $1,000 an hour to cultivate while you're talking about what you're doing this weekend, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So the time to cultivate and become intimate and give a damn doesn't exist in an hourly model. In a value model, you're creating value. We go deep with the clients. We build the relationships. We get to know them. We care. And when you care, it changes the outcome. And the part of the economic power goes back to how you compensate. If you are somebody that bills by the hour, you don't make money caring. You make money by billing hours. Mm-hmm. Caring is the relationship. The relationship isn't where they make their money. They make their money pen to paper, doing complex stuff, writing you 20-page memos nobody wants to read with a bunch of Latin in it and some footnotes. You ultimately will have to call them to understand what that memo means. That's what they are measured on. That's how they get on in the world. They're slaves to the model. I mean, truthfully, labor theory is slavery because you're ultimately a product of a system where you're a cog in a wheel and you're only as good as your next hour. In a value economy, our professionals get paid to create value and they participate in the value they create. So it becomes a creative economy. It's not a zero-sum game. In an hours model, you only have as many hours you can work until you fall over dead. That's all you've got in life. In a value model, it is unlimited. As much value as you can create for the customer, they can absorb and basically benefit from it, and you can benefit from it. And that is transformative about what it means to live your life as a professional, but also from the client side about what it means. Now, I didn't mean to go on, but the second part of it is, imagine you're trying to build a house. Our client's trying to build a business, and they've got HR and finance and operations, and they've got legal and tax and accounting and strategy and everything that interplays every single day. And the only people that know this are the founders, the CEOs, the leaders of these businesses. They have to juggle everything. And, just like our health is holistic, the ham bone's connected to the jam bone, everything's a system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The business is the same. These things are systemic and connected, but the way that knowledge works is siloed. Being able to be holistic is transformative. And if you're building a house and you go to a competitor, they're going to say, well, look, I could build your house. I got this enormous hammer. And you look around, and that's all they got. All they've got to build your house is a hammer. Then you got to go hire a guy that has a sawzall and a different guy that has an electric drill. And occasionally you'll find a woman because it's still too old white guy dominated. But anyway, the point is that you being able to combine everything and to treat it systemically, holistically, the way it really is, and address the downstream issues. If you're going to raise money, for instance, for a new factory, you're going to fill that factory with equipment, which needs to be bought or leased. And then you're going to put people on it that need to use the equipment, which have to have agreements, of course, and they need to have worker safety issues, and there needs to be employment policies in place, and everything is connected. Being able to do that changes the outcomes, and it takes the brain damage out of consuming professional services and growing a business. That's what we're all about.
Man, that's awesome. Chris, I want to talk a little bit about some of this content you've been creating, because I understand you do quite a bit on YouTube and otherwise. Tell us, I want my audience to 100% go check out your YouTube channel and check out your shows. Tell us a little bit more about the kind of content you produce and why you do it, because I think it's really interesting. I think it's a great story.
Thanks, Adam. Well, you were a great guest too on the show. We're looking forward to having everybody see it. I'll guide you to the page in a minute, but look, the why behind that's really important. And right now, when you look at the news, you see we really vilify CEO, because what people see about CEOs are hired guns hired by a bunch of rich guys on the board of directors of a public company, making millions and millions and millions of dollars a year while people struggle because they're paid on labor theory. And that's true. All of that is actually true. But the truth is that all of the business content and news about businesses focus on the villains. They focus on those big guys that absolutely none of us can relate to, because their life doesn't resemble closely anybody's life. And the truth is that there are people that are thousands and thousands of business owners and entrepreneurs and immigrants who came here with nothing and created something that have the same title, that are the heroes of society. And their story need to be told, because people need inspiration and they need hope, and they need to know what they can do, and they need to understand their path through what other people's path was. And being able to highlight and give light and to the heroes that create jobs, that work their butts off, that aren't public, and they don't go out, they're not the shiny object on CNBC. No, they got their heads down every day building something of value in society. It really has been my passion these are the people we serve every day, to give them life. And by interviewing them, having them tell their stories, and also share what's authentic and real, because unfortunately we're in a society right now where facts are being used as propaganda to purportedly hold the truth. And the truth is really within you. Everybody's journey is different, and they have their own truths and their own perspectives. And what's true for them is just undeniable. And people need to hear that. So it's been a real pleasure to be able to tell those stories.
So, Chris, this is a terrible question I'm going to ask you, totally loaded. It's like saying which one of your kids is your favorite, which I've met them both, and they're two amazing, beautiful angels. So I would never do that, but this is going to be not quite that bad, but it's loaded and it's bad. And you can't say it was my interview. Give me, but the idea behind this question is I want my audience to get a flavor for some of the content, because I really want them to go check it out. So can you share just a story of any of the interviews that you've done that sticks out as just one of those like memorable moments? And again, it's the worst question ever, because it's like, all right, there were many, I'm sure, but I want one. Give us one that's just going to hook my audience so that everybody goes and checks out these interviews once we're off the line.
Oh, the memorable moments from the CEO interviews?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, people are talking about the things that inspire them and the ups and downs along the way and what keeps them going and their tips, right? And there's just amazing stories like, on Sita, for instance, the Sita Couture, she's the CEO of a sustainable apparel company, and it's just absolutely talented woman, for example. And she was talking about her dad is an organic farmer, and her mother and their sensibilities and how it shaped her, and how she grew up awkward. You had the organic farmer family before it was cool. So it was really like not cool. And it's like, but how that shaped her life and shaped who she is and how she leads in the world. Or in the same interview, and I'm just picking on her just to give an example of the richness of it, feminine leadership, because she's one of people that leads with her feminine power, and I've never seen her lead with a masculine power, and so she's never really had to compromise her feminine nature to find a place in this world, to be a leader in the business world, and that's amazing. People need to hear this. So just one example of a CEO and some of her story that I found just great.
Oh yeah, and I watched that one, and that was an amazing interview. And Sita was amazing. I saw that one. I've seen probably most of the interviews you put out because I'm hooked. I love the show. So that being said, Chris, I can talk to you about this all day long. But we're about out of time. Last questions. So if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Exemplar Companies, they want to learn more about they want to learn more about your content and the channels. I mean, what's the way for people to connect with you on all different levels there?
Totally. Thanks for asking. On our website, there's a ton about us and our story and examples of how we work with people at exemplarcompanies.com, Exemplar Companies on LinkedIn. We also have our Instagram channel. It might be We Are Exemplar. On YouTube, it is Exemplar Entrepreneur and Business Network because we're amassing a massive amount of resources for businesses to the real businesses, the heroes of the society, the entrepreneurs, the small business owners to consume. And that's something that's a part of our mission. And being able to have them as a part of a community to share with each other, not just to be the firm that helps them, but help them help each other, is a big part of our mission. So we'll be looking for that to grow over the next several years.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, really been awesome having you on the show today to share more about your mission and creating a value economy and also all the great content you're putting out there. Definitely highly recommend everyone go check that out. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Business, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments on the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Chris, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Love it, Adam. Love what you do.